Welcome back to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Carrigan, and today we have a panel put together for you. We are talking about digital strategy, how it actually works inside a franchise dealership, where it fits, how it falls short sometimes, where dealers can realistically take away from it and improve and work on. So I'm joined by Tim Pohanka, who is Executive Vice President of the Pohanka Automotive Group. Tim, welcome back to VADA Live. And Chris Einterz, who is Director of Online Retailing at Dealer eProcess. Chris and Tim, welcome to VADA Live. How are you?
Thanks. It's great to be back, and hopefully now the snow has melted a little bit, it's even better.
Totally agree. It's great weather in Virginia. We're in the Richmond area now, and at time recording, almost spring-like weather. To kick this discussion off, Chris, if you don't mind, let me start with you. So when dealers give you a call for help in digital retailing, online conversion, what's the number one problem and issue you're hearing from them right now?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks again for having me on today. Really appreciate the opportunity. But I think the number one issue that we hear a lot from dealers today is how do we maintain that consistency across our entire site, across all of our digital tools, across our entire website platform, right? I think one of the big areas that we see a lot of dealers really have a leg up against their competitors is those dealers that can provide kind of that omni-channel, consistent, seamless experience across not only just their website, but across all of their marketing campaigns, advertising campaigns that they might be running at any given time. I think one of the biggest things that shoppers are looking for now is they want to see consistent messaging across the entire platform, right? They don't want to see conflicting ideas, conflicting messaging, whether that be on your sites or via those marketing or advertising campaigns. So I think those dealers that are really honed in how do I make that experience not only personalized for the shopper, but consistent and seamless for those shoppers are dealers that are seeing the most success right now in that digital retailing space.
And Tim, not to put you on the spot early, what's your take on hearing that from the Pohanka Auto side of things?
I think obviously having a consistent message for your client is a huge deal. The experience for the consumer online needs to really be an extension of what your showroom experience is going to be. So obviously you wouldn't have a disjointed showroom. So you don't want to have a disjointed website, or you don't want to have a disjointed tool.
Having that omni-channel approach, if you would argue against that, you're speaking to somebody who's in the marketing space as well, understood, it's commonsensical, but perhaps attaining that can be difficult at times. Where do you think some fall short, and where are the headwinds to really getting there? Is it the tech? Is it the process, follow-up, something else, a mix of all the above?
Yeah, I think I don't think these things are siloed, right? I think they're, you kind of look at it like a Venn diagram where a lot of them kind of overlap. I think a lot of it falls on the individual dealerships and having a defined process in place to handle those specific shoppers, those specific leads, and having a clear strategy defined from the offset, right? When you're out looking at prospective providers for enhancing your digital retailing tools on your site, if you don't have a strategy in mind or business goals in mind, you don't really have that foundation for what you actually should be looking for in a partner, in a provider. So I think it's really a mix of, number one, the tech itself. The tech has to fit your strategy, your goals, and it's got to, from an integration standpoint, it has to be able to integrate with your existing systems, your CRM, your DMS. But then also that also has to align with whatever process you have set up in the store. And I think a lot of dealers sometimes need to take a step back and really think about that process in the sense of, hey, what process do I have in place now? And if we were to move forward with this new tool or this new provider or this new strategy, how does that process need to change or evolve so that we can maximize the ROI on this new tool or this new strategy that we decide to put in place?
And Chris, you had mentioned this, just unpack it a little bit. What makes a good strategy?
I think the strategy is going to be different for every single dealership. So I don't know that you can sit here and say this specific thing is going to make a good strategy. But I think the key is aligning that strategy and that process with what tools you're utilizing on your website, right? So like I mentioned before, if we're just out looking for tools or making changes or enhancements to our website, but we don't have a strategy behind that and why we are making those changes, you're not going to get the maximum ROI on those updates, on those changes, on those new enhancements that you're making on your site, because you really, the front end of it are the tools and the website yourself, but it's what is your staff and your team doing with the return that you're getting from those tools that ultimately is going to dictate whether or not it was a success, right? Because if you're putting a new tool on your site or you're putting a new strategy in place, it could be generating a lot of leads, a lot of traffic into your showroom, but if you don't have a specific strategy or a process in place to handle that, you're really not able to maximize the benefit from that.
And Tim, if you don't mind sharing, how has that played out at Pohanka? Any insight at all from your side on making sure that you're shaping that strategy and the, say, tactics from the communication side are laddering up to those?
I think the first thing is to go with the end result, which is the consumer experience. If we don't tackle any of these concerns or any of our tools or any of our partners without understanding the end result for the customer experience, I think that's where the disjointing comes in. A tool for the sake of a tool or a written strategy that doesn't have follow through or the right goal and user in mind is going to fail. So it starts with what's your goal for the consumer. And since no consumer operates on a plan that you can set, you have to have a plan that can accept the customer the way that they want to. Do they want to work on a trade first? Do they want to work on a financing first? Do they want to search inventory first? So when you start to look at how a consumer can bounce around from lots of different ways, how do you make that experience work for them? And then when you start to take it even further, you have to start registering what's a level of success. Is success selling the car completely online? Is success the consumer coming in and spending less time in your store? Is success a consumer feeling more comfortable with who you are? So you really have to start focusing those goals in mind first, then figuring out how your partner and you can work together, and then how to maximize the use of whatever you're doing. Getting your team involved. When you look at where we've been as an industry and where we're going as an industry, if you told someone 10 years ago or 15 years ago we'd be disclosing more and more and more online, they would be scared and scared and scared and scared. I remember growing up in the industry being told never give a price, never give a trade value, never give an interest rate. All of those things are still somewhat ingrained in our industry. And with a lot of people, and those are people that need to be brought on to the education side, that an informed consumer isn't a bad thing to have. It's a good thing. And then how well you are getting that information out. So I think any tip I would give is keep that customer in mind. And is your process engaging to get them to want to give you more? If it's not, then it's not going to work, and you have a partner or a tool or whatever just for the sake of having it and checking a box. Make that box be your box. And like I said earlier, is your showroom experience reflected online? Because that online experience is your new showroom.
Thank you for that, Tim. A question for you both, just a level set. You don't need a 7-figure budget to get this done, right?
No, I'll go first if you don't mind. No, I will say this: long before all of everything has been out there, it really is a question of what your process is going to be. I think the tools that are out there do a better job of making it easier for you. So a small dealer can do just as much as a big dealer. There's not a difference in that, if that's your question. When it comes to marketing, to Chris's point, you have an omni-channel experience. You know what you're advertising in A and B and C and D. Just make sure it's consistent and that you can activate your tools. And he's 100% right. If you can activate more of your tools on more of your advertising or more of your places on your website, the better off your results are going to be.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything Tim just said, and I would just add too, like, a lot of these things are things that dealers have been doing for a while, right? And they're almost just kind of reframing what that conversation looks like and what that strategy is. And to Tim's point, I spent about 8 years in automotive and as a sales and F&I manager, so I have a lot of firsthand experience working in that industry. And 100% agree with Tim. 10 years ago, the approach to disclosure of information to a consumer was very, very different. I remember our GM hammering salespeople saying, just get them in, get them in, get them in. We don't give prices and payments over the phone. Nowadays, if that's your strategy, your competitors, frankly, are probably eating a lot of your lunch right now, because a lot of dealers are have adopted that strategy of transparency and additional disclosure. And I'll give you a stat that was done by Capital One does a car buyer journey study every year. And one of their recent studies that they released shows that trust of a dealership from a consumer's perspective is nearly 3 times more of an indicator of whether or not that shopper is going to purchase from a dealership than price. So that means that if a shopper trusts you as a dealership, they're much more likely to purchase from you than just purchasing from you because you happen to maybe have the lowest price in their area. And one of the big elements of building that trust with those consumers nowadays is that transparency and that disclosure that Tim just mentioned. So I think those dealers that have adopted that strategy of, to Tim's point, kind of meeting that shopper where they're at and allowing them to kind of work a deal or get that information kind of on their own terms, I think is very important. And I think, the dealers that are doing that and have adopted that first are the ones that are seeing the most success with it right now.
It's a fantastic point.
Yeah, Dan, one thing to keep in mind is that there's one thing consumers can never get back, and that's time. And anything that you do to respect their time makes a difference in any type of negotiation or any type of business transaction. I firmly believe that. I've seen that firsthand here in Virginia. When you look at when the hybrid vehicles first came out and people took to them because they could get on HOV, they weren't doing that for anything other than the fact they wanted their time back. And so the respecting a consumer's time is the most important thing. And when you hear people talk about 3 or 4 or 5 hours in a dealership, that's a way of the past. It shouldn't take that long to do a transaction. That's the point of technology, how to make yourself more efficient, how to do those things. And if you're doing it right and you're taking advantage of it, you will close more deals. You will have customers spending less time. They will trust you more, and they will pay you more for the fact that they do believe in you.
Thank you both, and recognizing trust being that goal. Time, you pointed out, Tim, is consistency. What are those other things and elements that build that trust that dealerships are trying to attain?
I mean, when you look at what when you think of your policies and what you do, I mean, one thing that we do is we offer our clients a 5-day exchange. Why do we do that? We do it because we would do that anyway. Why not talk about it? When you look at our lifetime warranty coverage, it's a value add. We do free state inspections on cars. There's lots of places where dealers are doing value adds or things that they would do for their consumers. They just don't do enough time talking about it. I mean, if you've got a policy that you're going to do the first oil change, be loud and be proud about it. Talk about it. If you do loaners, if you whatever your item is, don't let it hide in the corner. I spoke to a dealer at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Well, we have an unwritten rule about that." I go, "Well, why is it unwritten?" "Well, we do it. We just don't want everyone to know we do it." "Well, why not?" And we're fearful that everyone will exchange their car. They don't. Most people buy the car they want. So those are the things I think that make a difference and build trust is, are you willing to do those things? I mean, I bring that 5-day exchange up because it's funny. We had a client upset here a couple of weeks ago, and I guess he came in with his wife and she was standing off to the side, and he was giving all these reasons why he didn't like the car, and it was really didn't like the color. And my sales manager kept interrupting him saying, we'll take it back and give you another color. And yeah, I guess he had his speech ready because he thought he was going to get fought, and it was a lot easier than he thought it was going to be. So I think that's part of it is, be proud of what you do and talk about those things and get them out there. That's what builds trust. Say what you do what you say.
Yeah, and to Tim's point, I mean, that he basically hit the nail on the head, but I think we look at it here at Dealer eProcess as kind of three main contributing factors. Number one is that transparency, like Tim said, just letting people know. And making sure that they're aware of all the information that's available to them. Number two is consistency. Is that information consistent from all those different channels? Are shoppers getting conflicting messaging, or are they seeing the same message regardless of where they're getting that information? And then lastly, which sometimes kind of I feel like goes people don't really think about it, is accuracy. Is the information accurate, right? Because it's we can be as transparent as we want and we can be as consistent as we want, but if that information is not accurate, what is ultimately, what purpose is it ultimately serving? So I think those are three main, the three biggest contributing factors, at least. I know there's some more nuance that goes into it holistically, but I think if I were to identify three main contributing factors to building that trust, at least from a digital strategy and in an online space, those would be the three main components.
Appreciate you both.
One thing that when Chris brings up accuracy, one thing I would say that we're working on here, and that's been a big project, was when you're looking at tools or partners or things that go on there, really ensuring that you're answering the question that the customer asked. A lot of dealers will go back to going back to that old school approach of, when can I make an appointment? When can you come in? When can you do this? But they fail to answer the original question. And I learned long ago that a question is just sometimes a statement. It doesn't change things. If someone says, I don't really like a blue car, that's not, I'm not going to buy a blue car. It's just, I don't necessarily like a blue car. They may still buy it. So answer the question that they have. Don't worry about going, I need to get you in. Start answering questions. And then that, I think, is part of that accuracy, where are you taking the time to read what they're writing, to answer their questions the right way and give them the information they want.
Thank you both for the insight, entertaining that question. It's amazing, and hearing you. In many ways, I guess we're laddering up to a question about AI. And if you are tuning in to VADA Live, you will recognize we have a special series on the topic. We definitely take time to go through those episodes should you have any questions with various experts. Tim and Chris, where is AI as part of this discussion? I'm hearing themes just as accuracy, consistency. When someone's looking at implementing this, especially with their retailing efforts, what are thoughts from your perspectives?
Yeah, I think number one is AI obviously has been this big explosion recently, and it's almost become in some spaces a kind of just like a buzzword, where there's certain industries or certain providers or certain platforms that kind of tout this idea of AI and, hey, we're integrated with AI and et cetera, but there's not really a lot of specifics that kind of goes along with it. And I think one of the key things when it comes to AI is understanding what we're actually looking to do. Once again, what is our strategy? What is our process? What is ultimately our end goal that we're attempting to achieve? And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to AI, specifically with online presence and a website platform today, is the focus on AI-powered searches. Because nowadays we see a majority of searches are zero-click searches. They're AI-powered. And so how those search engines are able to parse your website to make it advantageous for you to appear high on those search results, I think is very, very important and very key for a lot of dealerships right now, because that aligns with strategies with SEO and GEO and targeting and LLMs, crawling all of your different pages on your website and being able to produce those high quality search results that shoppers are looking for when they're using those AI search agents. I mean, you look at nowadays, a lot of smartphones nowadays come with AI agents built into the smartphone itself. So it's almost becoming like second nature for a lot of consumers now, that this is just becoming part of their everyday lives. So I think that being a big focus from the dealership perspective is, how is my website specifically being seen by those AI agents, first of all, I think should be the number one thing that dealers are looking at right now. And then second to that, I would say, how are AI tools and AI personalizations helping the users that are on my site? Are we utilizing AI as a chatbot? Are we utilizing AI functionality for things like inventory reporting, CRM reporting, DMS reporting, things like that? Because to Tim's point earlier, ultimately, we want to be able to use these tools to be able to provide not only a more seamless and consistent and cohesive experience for the shopper, but we want to be able to use these tools to make our lives as the dealership easier so that we can focus on the shoppers more, right? And I think what a lot of dealers sometimes where sometimes they miss the mark is they think that AI, or they view AI as a total replacement for something that they're doing in the dealership, when really it should be viewed more as an enhancement or as a supplement to some of the processes that they're using in their store.
As maybe final remarks, both appreciate you taking time to join us on VADA Live. And Tim, I'll start with you. Within the digital retailing space, any successes that stick out to date that others could benefit and learn from?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you say, we were cool when it wasn't cool. We had been doing offsite deliveries long before COVID, and we had success with it. And then when COVID happened, we were already we had already hit the ground running. We had one of our best months ever that first month of COVID. Because we were already digital retailing. We were already doing offsite deliveries. We were already negotiating online. So we had already had that baseline. And then we've had some great people here who have taken to it. We had a salesperson that was doing 44 deliveries a month. And he learned that, if he was doing a lot of his work online with his customers, they were here for an hour. And, he was working 8 hours a day, and that's a lot more deliveries he can do if their customers are only here for 8 hours, if they're only here for an hour. So he really took to it, and he's worked with his team about that. And, now he's a sales manager and he's doing a great job, but he's taking advantage of digital retailing and being able to do the work online to make the customer experience better. And it kind of dovetails in with Chris's comment on AI. I mean, there's so many different ways you can have AI in your store. Focus on what's important, and then grow from there. AI's got a lot of people scared, just like the internet had people scared. There's no reason to be scared. It's just work the process, work what you want into what you're doing. Don't necessarily listen to everybody saying it's AI, it's AI. That's your answer. It's not. It's a tool. It's part of your process. But the biggest thing I would say though is cut the fear. It's not. These are things not to fear. They're things to be embraced. They're things to look at down the road.
And Chris, closing remarks from your side with dealers looking at this and perhaps asking the question, okay, SEO, GEO, AEO, CRM, I'm getting the acronyms now. Where do I start? And amid a sea of various options, and hearing this group loud and clear, personalization, utility is an important part of that. But generally speaking, where can somebody start?
Yeah, I think the main starting point for a lot of dealers, and especially dealers that maybe are, to Tim's point, maybe a little bit hesitant to kind of adopt this new way of the world, so to speak, that we're moving towards, I think is being able to prioritize things like digital engagement and lead quality over maybe some of those vanity metrics, like things like total lead count, other specific metrics like that, which on the surface may look, pretty good. But when you really start to dig into some of the data, it really is, it doesn't paint a fully holistic view of true performance and true ROI on those tools. And I think that, looking at things like drilling down and looking at things like website interaction specific, VDP page views and things like sales conversion rates from specific marketing channels, from specific tools on your site, I think are great points for dealerships to start, because I think when dealers are able to understand a shopper's kind of entire digital journey, as well as understand the lifetime value that a shopper brings the dealership through, that a shopper that's acquired through one of these marketing channels and the value that shopper brings to a dealership. I think that helps a dealership fully understand where they should allocate their time and where they should allocate their resources, because they're able to get, like I said, that holistic view on what they're actually getting in return from these investments, and then basically make the determination there of, hey, this is where I want to focus more of my time and energy on, or hey, this is an area where maybe we tried it and it just didn't work, and let's move on to something else.
Chris and Tim, thank you for joining us on VADA Live, sharing practical insights inside both the marketing side of things with Chris and Tim from the dealership side. And you were hearing from Chris Einterz, who is with Dealer eProcess, and Tim Pohanka of Pohanka Automotive Group. And that does it for this edition of VADA Live. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Dan Carrigan, and we hope to see you next time.